Hello and welcome to our podcast, Lessons Learned to Advance Your Career. This is a new segment of our global podcast named 10 Lessons Learned. In this special segment, we dive into the wisdom of professionals who have navigated the highs, the lows, and the turning points in their career. My name is Siebe Vanderzee and I'm your host. I'm a corporate executive recruiter with more than 25 years of experience, helping companies find the best possible talent and coaching people land their next, hopefully perfect job. We cover it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because as you know, career success doesn't typically happen by accident. It happens lesson by lesson. Our guest today is Julia Snedkova. Julia is a successful career strategist and executive coach. Her work is focused on helping ambitious corporate women future-proof their careers, break systemic barriers, and step into executive roles on their own terms. She has worked across more than 30 foreign markets, and she has lived in Russia, France, Switzerland, and in Singapore. Known for her strategic clarity and sharp insights, Julia operates at the intersection of executive development, gender equity, and AI-driven career design. By the way, in the past, Julia has worked in senior level positions for Fortune 500 companies in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. She is an ICF certified coach. She also holds an MBA degree from INSEAD, a global business management school just outside of Paris, where she is currently located. You can learn a lot more about Julia Snedkova on our website, 10lessonslearned.com. Hello, Julia. Bonjour. Comment ça va? How are you doing?
Hi, Siebe. Thank you so much for having me here. Absolutely delighted to be here with you and to share with me all my lessons. I feel humbled after all your presentations that you gave about me, but I'm here to share everything I learned indeed after all these years in my corporate career and coaching as well.
Well, you have a great background. We're going to be talking about that, of course. And for example, to start out, I'm just curious, operating at the intersection of executive development, gender equity, and AI-driven career design. How do you explain that? What does that mean, that intersection where you're at?
That's such a beautiful question to start. Because indeed, you captured all the three important directions that I believe we need to be talking about today when we speak about someone's career. And in my case, I speak about women's career. AI is non-questionable anymore. AI came to stay. And I see that not so many people realize it this way. So we need to ensure that we increase our AI literacy today. We really stay equipped with AI tools that we can not only be irreplaceable, but also be as efficient as possible in the future. So that's kind of AI part, because I really cannot reinforce enough how important it is, because I believe AI revolution is almost similar to the arrival of electricity years ago, because the change that will hit us in, let's say, 18 months from now will be really unimaginable for us today. The second, gender direction. Well, I work exclusively with women. Because I believe I can transfer the most of my knowledge based on my experience, based on my corporate lessons I have. And executive, that's the role where I feel women struggle the most. I feel like women, it's almost a pyramid. Women are largely present at the bottom of the pyramid and the middle levels, but then they struggle to make the leap to go to the highest positions. And that's where I kind of help them to navigate the trajectory.
Interesting, as far as the role of women, of course, with your international experience, is that the same in every country as the role that women have in a corporate environment? Or does it change whether you are, as you are in France and compared to some of the other countries in Asia where you have worked? How do you see that?
Absolutely, it's different. And I'm opposed to say different because in some cases it's drastically different, right? So we have countries that are much more culturally advanced as United States where you're based, right? So like there is a better achieved, let's say, parity or gender diversity in the corporate environment versus, let's say, Middle East or Asia, right? And so I guess it's normal to have this cultural lag. What's important is to be aware that it exists. It's important to be culturally flexible, especially for managers or for leaders who are expatriated to work with those people, nationalities in those specific locations, to be able to read the cultural differences and scan cultural insights and to be as efficient leader as possible in those environments. Because for some locations, for some countries, I believe it will take longer to get the gender parity that we're all aiming to achieve.
Yeah. And finding a job and that whole process, and we're going to be talking about that, of course, in more detail. I assume that that is different in different countries, the approach. And especially when I think of women or minorities, sometimes they are not treated in a respectful way.
I don't want to go into the respectful, disrespectful way, right? So if you're speaking about corporate segment that I'm focused on, so I believe that pretty much their cultural standards in Fortune 500, Fortune 100, it's very the same, right? So I tend to believe that women are treated fairly. Where the struggle is that really get up into their career. If you think about the classic corporate segment. However, what makes the whole industry different, what disrupts the industry today, I mean the career coaching, is the remote working. Because there are a lot of opportunity today for people being located in one country but employed in another country and working for startups, so scale-ups in different locations. And it really changes the dynamics today because it gives more opportunities, it gives more visibility as long as you are prepared as a candidate. So for me, it's not about how women are treated, it's also how women are positioning themselves today as they're ready to succeed in this new environment. Because being treated or not treated, it also goes back to how you set up your own boundaries, right? What you allow to be done to yourself or not to be done to yourself.
I like that. I appreciate you say that. When it comes to AI, indeed, it is relatively new and it will, well, take over in many ways. And from a recruitment point of view, of course, I understand the efficiency for companies, hiring companies, recruitment agencies to use AI. At the same time, I keep hearing from candidates the frustration they have when they are communicating, they are applying for a job, and basically they are communicating with a computer, not a real person. At least that's the perception they have. What are your thoughts on that? AI as a job seeker, not a recruiter necessarily.
It's true, right? It's really fair. But also, to be fair to the recruiters, quite often they receive AI-generated CVs and AI-generated cover letters. So what we are having today is pretty much AI is talking to AI on both sides. And I guess that's where the whole setup is wrong, because we are completely missing the human element, right? So on one side, candidates, they don't show anymore their human personality because they want to be faster and they ask I don't know, LLM models, ChatGPT, Claude to prepare their CV and send it through. And on the other side, on the recruiter side, it's basically machine scanning all the received applications. And I think the system will not work long term because it basically creates bottlenecks on both sides, right? And so we still need to have human. Yes, AI came and AI will stay, but what's important is to establish this AI to human, or actually human to AI way of communication that we must to find a way to welcome in our lives.
We have to get used to it. Is that
Yes, we get used to it, exactly, because even in the career leadership coaching, what I see a lot, so it won't be anymore human to human in the future, it will be human to AI. And it's a skill that we need to develop, like how do I manage AI capabilities? Because there will be AI-powered teams in the future, right? So the human to human teams anymore. And so those skills, we need to be A, aware about it now, today, and B, we need to start developing. And unfortunately, B is the issue today because like I see people not focusing enough on the second part of the equation.
Yeah. Before we get to your lessons, I want to ask you a question about your experience, your life. Is there perhaps a lesson that you have learned in life, in your career, that you wish you would have learned when you were, let's say, 25 years old?
I would say I have quite a few.
We all do.
But I think the main one that took me quite a while to absorb is just always be true to yourself. And I think it's very important in career as well, because I see a lot of people, and it happened to me, I'm guilty myself. I was climbing the career ladder or being as part of career ladder that was not my aspiration. It was more social pressure. It was more success stories of my peers. It's more what I've seen in my business school. It was something that felt prestigious, right? Like working for, I don't know, consulting firms, applying to McKinsey's of the world. I knew deeply inside it's not my career track, but then hey, I ended up going through the interviews, getting job offers. So like, I don't want that. And I think this bravery to say, no, it's not my path. And basically that what I ended up doing, saying no to the corporate job and switching to the career coaching that I truly sincerely aspire to do. I would say I learned it a bit too late to say to myself, no, is it's not what you want? No, you've been influenced by outside world and just go back to your track. And I think that if I would learn it before, it would be definitely more powerful in my life.
It's interesting. And of course, you have many times, you have your, whether it's family, your friends, associates around you, they want the best for you. And they tell you, you should do it this way. And then you should do it that way, which with positive intentions, right? But then your own brain perhaps tells you, that's not really what I want. And I have experienced that to some extent, moving to different countries. And well, there was no family around and initially no friends around. So I had to figure it out myself. I'm very grateful for that. So I like your lesson with that and your advice. Let's take a look at your lessons. And there is a sequence. Our listeners will find out the lessons, they are connected. But lesson number 1, know what you want. What are your thoughts on that?
It's true. I try to structure my lessons in a way that would be helpful to the listeners. So there is a logic behind, right? Because obviously we can give different defragmented lessons, but then it's easy to memorize this way. So know what you want. It's very basic, right? It sounds so simple, but I found out doing the coaching careers that quite a few people, they not even build, because build is a conscious action. They live their careers on autopilot. They simply assume that if they stay in this role X years, the company will notice it, the company will promote it. But it doesn't happen this way. And eventually, when you start talking to them, asking like what you want, they don't have this answer. They might say, I want a bigger role. But what does it mean, bigger role? Do you want a bigger title? Or do you want a bigger team? Or do you want a bigger financial accountability because you believe you are ready? And this what part is very blurry. And I believe it's very important to have an idea from the beginning of your career, or at least as early as you can, what's your final destination? At least as basic as it is, do you want to have a general career, like to be on a general manager track? Or do you want to be a specialist-driven career? Do you want to be CFO and specialize in finance? Or CMO and go for marketing? Like, what's your end destination in a way? Because if you don't know where you're going, you will never get there. And so for me, what do you want? It's absolutely the starting point of any career discussion I have.
Yes, I hear you. And at the same time, I think for many people early in their career, it may be difficult to define what they really want while they are still early in their career. And again, I'm not saying I have the solution for everything, but I started out in international banking, corporate banking. And that was not really that I thought that's my life, that's my career. But I am very grateful for the things I learned over multiple years working in a very large financial institution, for example. And I'm just saying that because you're right, there are many people that say, hey, this is my ambition, this is my desire, this is what I want to do, and how do I get there, etc. But things can happen. And how do you deal with that when things change? It could be a financial crisis, or we have seen other situations that really impact the total economy. How do you adjust as an up and coming career person? How do you deal with that?
First of all, I'm 100% aligned with what you said, because look at me, I'm in the same boat with you. I changed my career along the way, right? And I think what's important is I absolutely accept, and it's very fair, that from the beginning, we don't know what's the end destination. But I'm all about measurable results, right? So if you don't know where you're going and you want to experiment, give yourself a certain period of time. It could be, I don't know, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. But then you say, okay, up until this period, I want to experiment. Do I like this career or not? Do I enjoy finance, or I want to go to another industry? Do I want to stay in retail, or I want to go somewhere else? It's really about making this conscious pause and reflect if you're heading in the right direction. Because time flies surprisingly fast, right? And it also happens with career, it happens with life, right? And so the last thing I want for our listeners to happen is just to lose years like it's the blink of an eye, right? So it's important to pause or even just have a certain routine once per year, twice per year. You pause and you reflect. Are you on the right career track? What's happening in your office? What's happening with your career? Are you happy or not? And if you're not happy, like what's exactly you're not happy? How would you like to change? Where would you like to end? Because it's easy to sit and believe that your career will build itself. It will never happen.
Great point. Great point. So lesson number 1, know what you want. Lesson number 2, know why you want it. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Look, my tips and my lessons are very intuitive, right? Because it's important why you want it. And it kind of goes back to the learning or lesson I shared from me personally when I said, like, be true to yourself, like, know your own why. Why do you want it? Is it you who wants it, or it's an external noise that pushes you to do certain things? And so why? It's about establishing this deeper honesty with yourself, why you're aiming for certain things. And there are no right or wrong answers as long as you're honest with yourself. You want it because it pays a lot. You want it because your ego wants this title. You want it because it's in line with your values and your purpose and calling. What it is, again, there is nothing to be judged. It just say it to yourself and then say, okay, does it really aligns with my true self or not? And then you go.
Yes. It's a good point. It's a very good point. And I was thinking about that. You already mentioned, of course, you want to make a certain amount of money. A title can be important to people. I think also to use the line or the question, will you love the job? Is there passion for that role, that organization, maybe the products or the services that they provide? I'm also curious if you have any thoughts about when people are confused about what they want, where to go next, to use an assessment. Does that make sense to you to say, okay, let me find something which is neutral? You have to answer certain questions and there's a certain analysis that comes out and say, well, you are more likely to do it this way than that way. Is that a tool that you apply, that you believe in, and does it make sense to you to use an assessment?
It's a very good question because I'm a very brainy person, so I love data. Data for me is super important. But in case of human beings, I don't think it's black and white. I really don't think, like, if you ask someone to do an assessment or to do a test or whatever the assessment you will be asked to do, I don't think it will necessarily lead to the correct answers, because all our decisions are driven by emotions, and emotions you cannot capture. Quite often you cannot capture in the self-assessment, in the self-test that you will be asked to do. So for me, it's really digging deeper. What's your hidden drivers? Like, what stops you or what powers you to do or not to do certain things? And it could be, I don't know, like, it could be fear not to fail. It could be desire to succeed. It could be something else, but definitely there are hidden drivers. And quite often you will not be able to find out from basic, as you said, assessment.
Yeah. Now, I know that there are, in the United States and perhaps in other countries as well, hiring companies that apply an assessment. In other words, if you go through the first interview, they like you, then they ask you as a candidate to complete one of their assessments. Would you say that's not a good tool, or it's a way to compare multiple candidates that all take the same assessment, and you can look at the rankings and say, wow, this person scores this much or that low, whatever it may be. Does that have value for you, or do you say, not really?
I think it's kind of slightly two different points what we are discussing, because in the first case, you gave me a beautiful example if person doesn't know where to go career-wise. And
Yeah.
here I would say assessment would be secondary, because there is a deeper driver or motivation that sits inside, and our job is to help person to uncover it.
Yeah.
In the second case, when company give quite often hard skills assessment, I'm definitely for it. I used to have it in my own teams. If there is one specific skill which is for you is non-negotiable to have in specific role. It could be analytical skills. It could be for English non-native locations, English skills. It could be usage of Excel. I don't know, I exaggerate, usage or knowledge of AI right now, usage of machine learning. So it's, if there is a specific knowledge that is required, of course it needs to be tested. Because we just discussed, today we live in the environment where people send through AI-generated CVs that you still need to, as an employer, to verify at the end.
Yeah, no, you make a very good point. My questions are somewhat based on what I hear from candidates here in the United States, and I hear their frustration expressed about AI and sometimes about assessment tools, and say, well, I haven't had much of a conversation with anyone there, but now they want me to take an assessment. But I appreciate your thoughts on that. We're talking today with Julia Snedkova, a successful career strategist operating in the intersection of executive development, gender equity, and AI-driven career design, sharing her lessons learned to advance your career. Before we move on, here's a quick message to our listeners. We really appreciate your support. Whether it is sharing our podcast with a friend, leaving a review, or checking out our affiliate partner, Audible, every bit helps us bring you the lessons that matter most. Speaking of Audible, they are a great platform to enjoy both lessons learned to advance your career and, of course, 10 lessons learned, in addition to thousands of audiobooks and other inspiring podcasts. You can try Audible for free for 30 days at audibletrial.com/10 lessons learned. Moving on. Lesson number 3. Plan to get there. Lesson number 3. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, it's kind of continuation of our career lessons planning, right? So when you know what you want, or presumably you have your test plan, which you want to test what you might want, and you are honest with yourself why you want it, the next step would be plan your way to get there. Because if your goal is to be promoted to director or manage team, start putting yourself on the project where you're exposed to managing people from the early on. If your goal to be promoted and manage business units, start putting yourself in situations where you have financial responsibility and you start managing P&L or at least budget as soon as you can. Really proactively put yourself in situations where you give yourself knowledge exposure. And for me, it's not about necessarily at this stage visibility exposure, but knowledge exposure. Learn as much as you can, especially if you're at the early stages of your career. I love this comparison, like with a sponge. Try to absorb as much knowledge as you can. It doesn't hurt. It's not heavy to carry. It will really serve you later on. Be conscious what's element of the puzzle you need to put together to get to your dream role or dream destination or dream outcome that you want to get. And again, the outcome we just discussed, it could be title or salary or size of the team or business that you want to manage.
Yeah, so you have to prepare yourself. You have to do research and maybe acquire certain skills. On planning how to get there, there's also that item, a resume or perhaps a bio. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because most people have a bio or resume, but many times it doesn't necessarily connect with the position that they are applying for. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's important for candidates to put yourself in the position of the hiring manager, right? The hiring manager or employer will be seeing so many resumes or so many CVs. And so it's important to stand out to ensure that your specific CV tells a story. First of all, like who are you, what you have achieved in the past, why this achievement or how this achievement will be contributional to the new role and to the new business. Because what the hiring manager wants, they want at the end to increase profits, right? So eventually, as any company, we want to be profitable on the market. So what skills or what tools or what knowledge will you apply at your level that would contribute to the growth of the company or of the business? You always need to connect the dots to the business, not only to the job description, but even bigger, to the corporate strategy, to the how this role fits into the corporate strategy, what's the ambition of the company. It really would make you stand out as a candidate on the market. Don't think inside your box, right? It's such like it's a known sentence, like get outside of your box, but like really try to fit in your puzzle in much bigger picture. And I like use your helicopter view as early as you can in your career. Just be strategic how you want to position yourself.
A great point. You mentioned earlier measurable results. Is that something that you recommend that people put into their resume when they apply for a job right from the start to say, hey, I have experience managing this many employees or generating, revenues of this many euros or dollars, whatever the currency may be. Is that helpful to have that in your resume, on your bio, measurable results?
Absolutely, Sibe. For me, it's even not helpful. It's a must. It's non-negotiable because it's a currency of your CV, right? We spoke about currencies. That's the only way for the hiring manager to understood in a unanimous way what you have achieved, right? So, and you need to speak in the business language, as you just mentioned, like what have you delivered or generated for the company in terms of profit or revenue? What was the cost optimization you helped to achieve? How many people you manage? How many, I don't know, how you accelerated market growth or market share growth? And it always should be in their format that is understandable for their hiring manager. Because if you say, I grew market share by 2%, I really don't know if it's a lot or not enough, right? So if you're not in a tough market, maybe 2% is a huge growth. If you're in an open market and like everyone is trying to grab it, 2% is not enough. It's the same for everything. Like you always need to give the size, the perspective, and then you say what you achieved in this specific setup. Because otherwise, like it might not be clear for the hiring manager, whether it's for cost optimization. I don't know, is it million enough or not a lot, or how do I read it, right? So always try to be clear and put another person in your shoes. Like if I read your CV, would I understand it or not?
If I think about your CV, you have worked for some major corporations in multiple countries. And that's what I'm thinking of, for example. It's very clear when I look at your profile, you have lived and worked in multiple countries. You have done business in even more foreign countries. So that would be something that is part of your value proposition. And every person is different, right? But that's very clear. And so you don't have to explain to anyone, yeah, I know international business. It's clear from the moment they take a few seconds to look at your resume, your CV to see that. You also use the term, it's a puzzle. And recently I learned from actually a guest on our podcast, if you talk about a puzzle and, a puzzle coming out of a box and you have all the pieces. So yes, it may be confusing where to start and how to align them. But as you were saying, if you know what you want to do and you realize the skill set and perhaps experience that you need, those are pieces of the puzzle, right? And is that how you look at it as well? That for candidates that they have to make sure that they have all the pieces to the puzzle before they apply or while they are applying? Is there a thought on that? In other words, they have an ambition, and yes, I'm not fluent in French, for example, but I really want to work in France. So I speak some French, and over time I will get better at it. Is that good enough? Or do you say you have to be fluent? If you come to France, you got to be fluent.
Look, I have very probably unorthodox opinion on this one because I always heard for the spark in the eyes. And quite often for me, it would overrule the CV, right? So if I would have someone who would be junior, but would tell me, I want to learn and I'm going to learn and give me the deadline and I will prove you, I would hire this person without any hesitation. I've done it myself because I also remember for my first job when I showed up, I had absolutely zero skills in website creation, website management, and digital back then. And I just said, please give me a chance. I want to learn. And so I had a pact with my future boss. He told me, you have 2 weeks, prove it to me. And so I put in everything I could in these 2 weeks to learn. And so now when I see people who come in with this energy, who come in with this drive, this desire to learn, with a desire to grow, to your example, not speaking French, but wanting to succeed in this country, 100% I will recruit. And so for me, it's all about hiring for potential and not for the skills, which is a big debate right now, but I would always hire for potential.
I think it's a great point. I really appreciate you share that because I strongly believe in the same thing. The passion that people have, the energy, you mentioned that a few times, and in a management role, the ability to energize the people that work with you, for you, etc. Right? And that's hard to describe it on a resume. It's obviously part of who the person is, but it's hard to express passion and ambition on a resume like that. But great point. I thank you for that. Let's take a look at lesson number 4. Ask for it. And then you have a smiley face.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's the part often forgotten. That's why I put a little smiley, because it's important to ask for it. And I really mean it in the most humble way, not to brag about it, not to push people for it, but just share openly your aspirations. Don't keep it for yourself. Don't hide it. Don't shy away. But just if you really want to get to a certain position or certain level, share with people in the most curious way you can. You can always position it like, I'm aiming for your role in the next 5 years. What skills do you think I need to get by then? What projects do you think I need to collect right now that I'm prepared when I get there? And also, like, ask for mentors, ask for coaches, ask who can handhold you while you're getting there. Share it with your manager, because again, there is a big assumption going to the first point of our lessons that they will assume what you want. And so you don't need to ask for it. You don't need to know what you want because it's already figured. No, it doesn't work like this. Like, you really need to advocate for yourself. You need to speak up for yourself. You need to explain why you want to get this role and why this role will be the most logical evolution and next step in your career.
I like it a lot what you're saying, and it reminds me of things I dealt with in my career, and one has to do with my old boss many years ago, but he always said, start at the top. And this was working for a recruitment agency. And he said, if the CEO of the company likes you, chances are the people that work for that company will like you as well. Well, that's not always by definition true, of course, but there is something to say, but you need to have confidence, right, in order to do that. And you have to feel good about your skills and the ambition that you have. Using your network, you mentioned that, and to have, if you have a mentor, my gosh, how helpful that can be. Someone who is neutral, has your back under all circumstances. Very important to have that. But it is, obviously, it's a challenge. And there are also limitations. And the silly joke I have been using, talking to candidates for many years, I would love to win Wimbledon, happening now in London. I used to live very close to the stadium, and I attended as a visitor some of the games. Well, I never won a tennis match. So that ambition that I had as a young person, of course, doesn't make any sense at the stage where I'm at right now. But it can be, for other people as well. You may have an ambition to say, I want to be this, I want to do that, but you have to be realistic. And perhaps a mentor is a person that can put some realization into that ambition that people have. So on the one hand, I would say aim for the top. And on the other hand, be realistic as far as what's within your reach. Would you agree with that?
I would. Indeed, it's a balance, right? And I guess partially of this question could be answered at the point 2. Why do you want to win Wimbledon, right? And so it would help you to realize amount of work, time, resources you need to invest to win Wimbledon, because it's not like you're waking up at 9 a.m. Okay, today is a day. You need to prepare. And so we just don't see amount of efforts those sportsmen put behind to win it, right? All those efforts. And so when you say to yourself, I want to get to this role, always keep in the picture amount of efforts you need to put behind. And then it's like, why do I want it? Do I still want it if it requires me to get there? Like, it makes you more realistic if you want to invest it. Then for me, I'm always believe, like, as you said, shoot for the highest level you want. Make sure you are ready to commit, because you cannot just dream without action. You need to commit. And then you have all the resources to get there. And by resources, I mean time, I mean the energy, I mean their desire to get there. It's not only investment in the courses and coaches and teachers, etc. It's not about that. It's also your inner resources that you want to contribute. And then, like, why? Why do you want to win Wimbledon? So maybe this question will cancel out everything itself.
Yeah, why? Because I used to, it's no longer on my list, but because I can. And that's a silly answer to that question. But I know there are people, and perhaps I'm one of them, that like to push themselves. Even if you say, that's not going to happen, and being realistic, my chances of playing at Wimbledon, let alone winning, that's not going to happen. But there is, at the same time, I like tennis, and I have attended many high-level tennis games. I can talk about other sports. I like sports. But again, being realistic, that's not going to happen. So it's a combination of desire, ambition, and hey, I like it, and the realization that's not going to happen. But it's in a career, I think, as well, and I say it simplistically, but to become the CEO of a major company, wow, if that would be a realistic ambition. But there's typically only one CEO, and I see that, for example, people who want to serve on a board of directors. And it's not like applying for a job. It's a different process, but you have very qualified people, and the frustration is there that they haven't been able to find a board of directors position. It's different, again, than a job, but it's that ambition, and how do you get there, and how do you position yourself there? So I like the idea of asking for it. If you don't ask, it may never happen. And if you do ask, you may get a negative result. You learn from it, you go on to the next one. And I think that's very important in the job search process, is the persistence and perseverance. Never give up. And you know this, of course, as much as I do, that a lot of people, they go through the process, especially when people are out of a job, no fixed income, and yeah, they're qualified and they have a good track record, but where and when can they find that next opportunity? And then the mental impact, we both understand it's very tough. It's one thing to talk about it, but if you're in that position and you have to take care of your family, and again, it's not clear, and perhaps a difficult economic situation, that perseverance, that persistence, I think, is very important. And indeed, sometimes people just need the help from people like you to guide them and support them and give them the confidence. And yeah, you haven't found the job yet, but never give up, because it will happen.
Yeah, it fits 100% into my thinking, because you touched on so many important points. For me, giving up is not even in my vocabulary. It doesn't exist.
Thank you.
And I know, unfortunately, like this situation you described, when someone is on the job market and trying to find urgently the job, like the feelings and the emotions are different. But nevertheless, we need to carry on through this period, right? Eventually, it will be over. You just need to stay for this period as long as it might last. What I wanted to pick up, because you mentioned wanting to get on the board or wanting to get the job immediately, it all comes down to planning, right? So if you want to have a board position, the rule of thumb, you need to plan 10 years in advance, right? You really need to start positioning yourself in the right networks with the right people, that eventually, when you get to the status of the board position, you might be noticed. Same with your job search. You must plan for your next role while you're still in the role. And quite often, when we get hired, when we get promoted, we are in this cloud number 7. We forget about what's happening around us. And we stop networking, we stop sharing our ambition, we stop preparing for the next position. Well, it's now. Don't think because I just get employed, I must stop networking, because it's the biggest gap what I hear among my clients. No one networks. People don't know how to do it. People feel embarrassed to do it. But that's how you're going to build your career, right? So plan for it. So the more anticipative you are, the less stress you have when you unfortunately might end up on the job market next time.
I suggest they hire you as a coach.
Thank you. Would appreciate it.
I'm curious. I'm going to ask you one other question. Is there perhaps a lesson in life or in your career that you have unlearned, where you decided, you know what, I got to do it differently?
Yeah, the lesson that was the most, I don't want to say difficult, but it needed for me, it was to stop assuming. Like, I used to assume that I know all the answers. I used to assume that I know what's the best outcome for me, for others. I used to assume like it's all crystal clear in my head. But then I guess their turning point was actually during my MBA, as you mentioned at the beginning, because in my class, I had so many people from different countries. So I was exposed to almost 100 nationalities simultaneously. And I realized how different we think and how different we come up to conclusions, how differently we analyze. And so why I thought I would know what other person think, I would be proven wrong on so many occasions. And I guess this lesson, don't assume in personal life, in private life, in professional life, for me it became golden. Because like I would always conclude I know what other person thinks. And it's never true, obviously. So that was kind of one of the most important habits for me to unlearn. And even now when I hear that person concludes with no data, I was like, look, step back and rethink.
It's such an important point. I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I have had the same experience. And I went to a university where there were students from, in my case, 60 different nationalities. And we were connected for a full year, not only in our studies, but just, roommates or on campus. And indeed, I think it's part of human behavior. I'm pretty sure that we are very quick to judge behavior that is different than our own. And the example I always like to use is when I was transferred by the bank I was working for to the country of Uruguay in South America, to Montevideo. And when I arrived, I realized that restaurants wouldn't open until 9 o'clock in the evening. And, around 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm ready to have a meal. I couldn't change the country. The other thing I noticed that after dinner, many times in Montevideo, people would walk out in the street and just socialize. It was not, let's go home and watch TV. It was meet other people. And this is many, many years ago in my experience. But when I think back of, for example, this topic, and when I think back of the country of Uruguay, they were, I would say, the nicest people I've ever met. And it was that experience, but I take it with me because as we deal with the people around us where we live, I know, we are quick to judge and say, that's strange, that's different. Why do they do it that way? Once you understand the story behind it, it may make a lot of sense and see, maybe I should be doing that. So it can be very valuable to have those lessons learned.
I really love it because they're really interconnected. We as humans and we start judging, right? So it's immediate reaction quite often. And when you unlearn one part of their equation, the second one kind of gets resolved automatically. I love it because indeed, so for me, it was very similar. So stop assuming and then you eventually will stop judging.
Yeah, and I had to think of a graphic I saw the other day, and it was a little baby with a smile, and the comment was, every baby around the world smiles the same way, right? Doesn't matter culture, country, whatever. It's a baby and a smile. So, well, Julia, I want to thank you for joining us here all the way from Paris. Wonderful to have you on board. And thank you for sharing your lessons for career advancement with our global audience. In closing, you have been listening to our program, Lessons Learned to Advance Your Career. This episode is produced by Robert Hossery, and as always, we are supported by the Professional Development Forum. I also want to give my special thanks to our amazing team, Yi Wang, who manages our marketing and social media, and Cody Como, our episode editor. Our guest today is Julia Snedkova, a successful global career strategist and executive coach working with multiple clients, I want to say around the world, Julia, and sharing your lessons learned for career advancement. And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed this special episode. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a lesson that could impact your career and perhaps your life. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, our goal is to make the world a little wiser, lesson by lesson. Thank you, and stay safe.